Welcome to the Top Texas Lawyers Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the law firm of Abercrombie and Sanchez, PLLC. You can find us on the internet at astxlegal.com or by calling 1-888-981-7509. Your hosts are Brian Abercrombie and Samuel Sanchez. Brian has been practicing law for 18 years and is board certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization in the area of family law. Sam has been practicing for 13 years, is licensed in both Texas and Florida, and is a certified mediator. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and all views are the opinion of the hosts. It is not designed to provide legal advice for your particular legal matter, and it should not replace the advice of competent counsel. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy the Top Texas Lawyers Podcast. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Top Texas Lawyers Podcast, Election Edition. With me, as always, is my co-host, the innumerable, the invaluable, the master of disaster, Samuel Sanchez. How you doing?
Oh, what's going on, brother? What's going on? I'm glad to be here. Sporting the early no-shave November. I'm going to try to work it out. We'll see.
Yeah, you're going definitely going into the cowboy mold, like you're going to rob a stagecoach or something.
Yeah, either that. I'm going to try Burt. I'm going to try to channel my Burt Reynolds, my inner Burt Reynolds.
Oh, you could drive the Bandit. Yeah, you can drive the Bandit eastbound and down.
That's right.
No, but what kind of we got together today, we wanted to talk about kicking around some different topics. We're trying to take the podcast and maybe some other directions and give you some more interesting content. But what we're talking about today, I think it kind of affects everybody, is the election. Obviously, everybody's talking about the election. It's on every channel. You're inundated with phone calls, text messages, ads. I think in 3 hours yesterday, I got 15 text messages. So, but I mean, we're not necessarily just going to talk about the presidential election. Obviously, that's important and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to talk about kind of the areas where most people don't talk about with respect to the elections, your state and your local elections, and kind of how those affect your life. But any thoughts on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. As far as the text messages and phone calls and emails and door knockings and postcards, I mean, there's plenty of information out there, and it's confusing. I mean, it's really hard, I think, as a voter in Texas and in Florida, wherever you are, to kind of look at this election and say, like, really, what does it matter? I think we all get hung up in the president, even though, other than, a lot of executive orders, the president really has limited powers, at least domestically, to affect your life. Where, the other elections, whether it be, something that's going to be a constitutional amendment, whether it be a bond, whether it be, school boards or, local elections, these are the people that are actually getting stuff done that affect your family. And so it's really important, I think, that we take some time to kind of, honor the process. As lawyers, we're officers of the court sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of Texas and Florida. But in that, too, I think it's important for people to kind of have some additional kind of real world, grass level information about the election.
I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. I'm thinking that, let's talk a little bit about, like, I went and early voted yesterday. I hope you early voted. I don't know if you've gone yet, but
it's on my agenda for tomorrow. The lines were a little long up where I'm at.
I highly recommend it. It took us an hour and a half, but we got it knocked out of the way. But early voting, obviously, in Texas is going on until from October the 13th through October the 30th, and there's Sunday, Saturday times. There's plenty of available times to go, and that's probably a really good time to get down there and cast your ballot. I mean, I think the first few days of early voting are always pretty hectic, but I think the lines thin out. And there's typically plenty of locations in the county. But where I was going with all that is, you take a look at the ballot in your particular county or your particular precinct or wherever it is. And there's obviously a number of down ballot, races that are going on. I mean, we had several judgeships. And this is when my cautionary tale here is elections have consequences. And that's what, obviously everybody kind of knows that on a national level, but what elections can affect your life. I mean, a school board elections can affect, what your kids are taught at school, what kind of budget the school gets, where the money goes for where the school is. Does it go into the programs that you're interested in for your kids or not? Or in the local bond elections. I mean, we had an election a couple of years back here where they were trying to pass a school board bond to get some money for a new school. And the election wasn't well publicized. It was done in May, and nobody knew. So the bond didn't pass, and the school wasn't built because they didn't get the money, because nobody knew about the election and nobody went down and voted. And that's obviously something that has an impact on people's lives. And then, like I said, a judge, a family court judge, or a civil district court judge, those make a difference on your case and potentially can affect your life.
Yeah, absolutely. How many times do we see it, Brian? You know, like, unfortunately, and fortunately, depending on your perspective, I suppose, you know, judges are elected in Texas. And, you know, you never really realize how important that vote is until you're standing in front of one of them. And, you know, I think half the time when people do cast their vote, they walk in, and I mean, I don't want to disparage a lot of people, but I think there are plenty of people out there that really, they only go to vote on presidential elections, or if they do go to vote, you know, and kind of fulfill their civic duty, they really have done very little research on the candidates that they're voting for. So whether it be the old fashioned coin flip, whether it be, you know, hey, you know, I really like that person's last name, it reminds me of my favorite teacher in elementary school, you know, or I hate that guy. That guy's name is Wendell, and Wendell was the guy that beat me up in the second grade. You know, I mean, like, whatever it is that you do that, I would encourage you to be smart voter. You know, there's lots of places where you can go online to look at the ballot, what's going to appear. If there are constitutional amendments, either state, there's no federal ones this year, but if there were state constitutional amendments in your state, you usually can go to you know, that particular state, like floridavoter.com, floridaballot.com, texasballot.com for 2020. There's tons of resources that are going to tell you what's on there. You can just do a little bit of research. I'm not saying trust the internet on everything, but I mean, I can say that at least some information is going to be way better when you walk in the door to cast your ballot.
And a lot of websites and sometimes newspapers are going to give you at least a rundown of where the candidates stand on various issues. And then, you know, especially it's harder especially on state and local issues, you know, where the candidates stand on different things. And yeah, like you said, I mean, you go on and, you know, there's a lady or woman on the ballot I've never heard of. I don't know who this person is. You know, they're making decisions concerning my child's school, and I have no idea who this person is. Or, you know, I know sometimes there's tricky language on the ballots, at least here in Texas. You're talking about sometimes the ballot measure asks whether you're for or against it, and depending on how it's worded, you may vote the wrong way. You know, just depending on, maybe you intended to vote for it, but you vote against it because of how it's worded. So it's really important to take a look at those ballot measures and make sure you understand, you know, why they want a bond for a particular, you know, or why they want to raise money for a particular bond, why they want to raise your sales tax, you know, whatever the case may be. It's important to probably get that information before you go down to the polls. And there's, you know, I'm not, like you said, I'm not saying trust the internet, and I'm not saying trust the, you know, political parties or anything like that, but there's a lot of different places to go get information that can, you know, that you can weigh, you know, you can do the old balancing the scales.
Yeah, because one of the things I always tell my family, you know, I mean, I'm sure everybody has the smartest family in the world. You know, most of my family falls in that category, some of them not. But I will just tell you, you know, a lot of times, you know, watching political ads, or, you know, getting inundated by political advertisements in the mail, you know, there's going to be tons of information, and not all of it is highly regulated. You know, unfortunately, elections, you know, in any state across the union, you know, we've seen it in the 2016 election, we've seen it every election since then. There's, you know, there's going to be stuff that's just propaganda. There's going to be stuff on both sides. There's going to be stuff, or all three sides, whoever the, you know, group you're supporting, I'm sure they're giving you kind of their platform and what they want you to hear. And the smart thing for a voter to do is really, like, you know, be intelligent for yourself. Regardless of who you're going to vote for, the one important thing is that you cast a vote, but beyond that too, that you cast a vote intelligently. You want an informed vote. As an example, I'll give you one. You know, a lot of my family's in the oil industry, and so one of the big elections that they're always on you pay super attention to is railroad commissioner. Well, you know, in Texas, railroad commissioner, people kind of hear that and they're like, well, dang, I didn't even know we still had a railroad. And one, what a lame-o job to be the railroad commissioner, because, like, what power do you yield? You know, like, whoa, I guess the trains stop or they run at 3 o'clock in the morning. What you don't know is that in Texas, the railroad commissioner, he regulates the oil and gas industry. And it's a hugely important board that people sit on in relation to that in the state of Texas. Extremely powerful.
Lots of money on that board.
Yeah. And
Lots
so, you know,
money decisions, big money decisions.
big money decisions, big, you know, economic decisions for the state, big, even EPA decisions. I mean, there's just a lot of things that run through that board, and it's not the governor, it's not the head of the Senate, but this is somebody who wields a lot of power that sits on this board. So these are the kinds of things that I would just tell our listeners as you're kind of considering what's happening in your state and what's important to you, really kind of dig in and do some research. So at least, the people that you're casting your vote for.
So in Texas, they used to have what's called straight ticket voting, which you could go into the ballot box, about the booth, and check the box for Republican or Democrat, and then boom, it would fill out the ballot for you. You cast the ballot, you're out the door, you're on your way. As of September of, I believe, this year, they did away with straight ticket voting. So they no longer have that. So you actually have to go down the ballot now. And whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I do think it's probably a good idea to go down the ballot either way, and kind of, like we talked about, kind of look at what you're voting for and who you're voting for. And, if you don't know, ask somebody that, a good rule of thumb with judges that appear in court, talk to lawyers that appear in front of these judges. I mean, they're going to have the best information with respect to, how a judge's judicial demeanor is, how they decide cases, what their, what their judicial philosophy is like. The lawyers that appear regularly in front of the judges are the ones that typically, know the most about how the judge might rule on a particular issue. And it's worth asking. And then typically the Bar Association has polling. I know, the Dallas Bar Association has a lot of information on judicial candidates. Same with Fort Worth, Montgomery County, Harris County. Typically has information on the judicial candidates. I think that's important because, like I said, these people can make decisions that affect your lives. I had when I was a kid, there was a guy that there was a really, really, really bad criminal case in Fort Worth, and this judge, I guess, let this guy off with a light sentence, and the whole community was in an uproar that this guy shot this guy and got off with a light sentence, and everybody was kind of wondering. I was a kid, so I was like, what the heck's going on? And everybody's all up in arms about it. And then, then everybody kind of figures out, okay, well, we elect these judges. Oh, everybody figures out somebody put this guy in power. Somebody gave this guy the keys to the keys to the car, so to speak. And, that judge, I think, either retired or lost the next election. But, at that time, that judge made a seriously consequential decision that affected a lot of people's lives, and people, that were tough on crime, I think, were very upset about that decision. And, these local DA races, those people are finding out all across the country that the local DA race makes a huge difference in what crimes prosecuted, at what level, because the DAs have a lot of discretion on terms of what they're going to prosecute, theft of, what amounts, who's going to get bail, what the bail is going to be, or different in different categories, and that's obviously having a lot of impact with a lot of civil unrest in the country right now.
Oh, without a doubt, Brian, without a doubt. And you raise a really good point because, when as far as like talking to people who are in that industry in advance, I mean, you may have family members who are in the legal profession, or, maybe they're in, they deal in oil and gas, or maybe they deal, with particular Senate, where these senators sit in councils, in committees, and kind of the decisions that they've made. You can look at voting records if you want to see, like, how's this person been voting. One of my favorites is always attendance. Back when we were in, college, the old political sci, we would sit there, and that was one of the things, a professor would always say is like, hey, you want to know if your representative is working for you, see how many times he showed up to vote and how many times he missed.
Right.
And so, these are the kinds of things that can help you kind of determine how you want to vote, irrespective of whatever party you're choosing. If you look at candidates and you don't know anything about them, it's a difficult choice to make a lot of times. But beyond that, too, I would tell you that I think that, one of the things that I think has really come to light, I feel, in relation to early voting, and I'm glad that you did, brother, good civic person, voted early. But I would tell you this year is going to be extra difficult. COVID, the restrictions. I mean, I don't know, you can kind of tell us a little bit about your experience, but I know, with social distancing and limited numbers of polling places for early voting, if you think that you're going to wait till election day to cast that vote, I mean, that could just be insanity. So, voting early really seems like the way to do it, but why don't you fill us in? How was it?
Well, I can tell you the whole story. I mean, Texas did extend the voting, the early voting this year by a couple of days. I don't remember how many, but so that made it a little bit better because obviously they give you a big window. I mean, you got the 13th through the 30th to go vote, but get down to the polling place. Honestly, we had to stand outside. We waited for an hour and 15 minutes. Everybody was 6 feet apart. Down. So the line was really long because everybody was spaced out. But, and everybody's out there with, and it's a particularly obviously contested presidential year. So there's the Biden folks on one side, there's the Trump folks on one side. So they're waving signs and flags and, all that kind of stuff. And then, you're waiting in the line and they'll offer you water. They'll offer you, not ballot cards, but slates of candidates if you want one, that sort of thing. And then you get up past the electioneering line, and then like I said, everybody's still spaced out 6 feet apart, and then they let you in the building, and then you're still spaced out 6 feet apart, and then you go up there to the window. They have plexiglass up everywhere. You got to wait your turn. You go up there, you give them your ID, they run it. They're cleaning off everything after every person goes through. Then they clean off the voting machines after every person goes through. They also had people could go up, and I think you can make an appointment to do this, but if you physically can't get out to the polls, they can bring a voting machine to your car and allow you to vote from your car. So they will check your ID and everything like that. But there were a number of people that were doing that as well. So they're trying to make as many accommodations as possible to allow people to vote. So I didn't feel it was unsafe at all at any time. I thought it was fine. And hold on one second. I didn't feel it was unsafe, and I thought it went fine. So
good. Well, I know that, I think that's one of the unique things, obviously, with this election. If you're feeling ill, they are going to allow people to utilize curbside voting, just like you can use curbside pickup for food or, retail. So there's nothing that really should prohibit you from being able to cast your vote. Mail-in voting obviously requires substantial, explanation in the state of Texas. It does in Florida as well. But there's a whole lot of other ways that you can do it. And obviously we want everybody to, be safe and be smart.
Right.
But the big piece of it is that it can be done and it should be done. And, I think that if you have questions about, how best to proceed in voting, I would encourage everybody to put together a plan.
Mom always say, if you don't vote, you can't complain. So
I love that. Yeah, I agree wholeheartely. If you can't get your butt off the sofa to go in and cast a ballot, then suck it up, Buttercup. You're just going to get what you get. So I think it is important, but I want everybody to know, just do a little research. If you have concerns about, I'm not feeling well, can I still vote? Absolutely. Sure. There's a lot of different concessions that are being made this year for what's been going on to make sure that everybody's vote is counted.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a couple of places that are doing drive-through voting, things like that. But like I said, you can make an appointment. They really are trying to make accommodations for everybody. And honestly, when I was standing in the line, there were people that were coming up in wheelchairs and stuff like that. There was a couple that came up and he was pushing his wife in the wheelchair, and they let them right to the front of the line and let them vote. And nobody complained or called them line jumpers or anything like that. So if there's a physical handicap or something like that, you can vote from your car. They'll give you some accommodation to get in there and vote. And then obviously they let you wear your mask and everything like that if you're so inclined. So
okay. Yeah. And obviously in Texas, that's going to end on the 30th. So if you're going to get out and get to voting and you want to do it early, make sure you put together a date to get out.
Of Sundays, I think it's 7 to 7. So you've got plenty of time to go do it if you need to get off of work or whatever, and get out there and exercise your right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, everybody always talks about, there's two things you don't want to talk about, in good company, and that's politics and religion. But I will tell you that I think in the context of which we're addressing it, it's really important. I think you have to have those kind of conversations with family. And, specifically, obviously, a lot of times, Brian and I, as having a background extensively in family law, we talk a lot about how, families can break apart. And when they do, how everybody now has a different perspective. And so, one of the things I would encourage you to do is start early with your kids, right? This is an important process, as an American citizen, as an individual, irrespective of who you're going to support or what your beliefs are. I think that as a parent, if you have young children or even medium-aged children or older children, freaking talking to them about issues is really important. It can
Well,
be heated.
it's funny that you mentioned that because my son's 11 and he just got interested kind of in the process this year, seeing everything, and he's got a little overboard with it. I'm not going to lie. We got signs in the yard and everything, but I don't want to discourage that. So he's kind of taking it to a new level this year because he's getting interested in the process. I think it's important for him to know the process because obviously, he's the future. He's the future of our country. All kids are the future of our country, and educating them on the country and how it works and how it operates and what their rights are and how important it is because is super important.
Yeah, and as far as I don't want to jump on a bandwagon for the reasons this year that voting is so prolific in people's minds. But what I do like about what is going on is that it seems that the entire country is energized to vote. And that's something that a lot of times, as a country, we've had tremendous voter apathy in the past. In presidential elections, it seems like we're all willing to get up and go vote. But in any other election, the elections that happen in the spring or special elections, turnout is really, really small.
A lot of times it's those off-year elections that have the most impact on your life because that's a lot of times when the big judicial seats come up and half the judges are up for a re-election on the.
Yeah, that's when they're going to want to set the bonds. That's when they're going to want to talk about tax rates or sales tax or personal income tax. Like these are the kinds of things. But I think if you encourage your kids, to your point, Brian, really kind of allow them to get invested and participate in the process. It gets them excited. It makes them look forward to that day. I don't know about you, but I couldn't wait to turn 18 to vote, man. I was like, sign me up. Let's go. And that was the first thing I did. I'm an October baby, so freaking November. Yeah, I was like, I couldn't wait. I was like, I got to be registered to vote. I couldn't vote in the November election, but I tell you what, spring election, I was ready to vote. So, these are the kinds of things that I think as a family member, can be challenging because let's talk about this for just a second. Obviously, there are going to be plenty of times where we don't agree. That's what's great about our country is you don't got to agree. You have the freedom to be able to disagree, even within your family. But a lot of times that can be difficult, Brian, when you're talking about, split homes. So, son's coming home to mom's house and she's ultra right wing and she's, ever Trumper and she's got her MAGA hat and she's like super excited about the election. And then she goes to dad's and dad has become a super liberal and he's wearing, Sleepy Joe's hat. And he's like, hey, I can't wait to get out there and vote for the Democratic candidate that I put forth. As an attorney, do you ever have, those kinds of situations come up and how do you help your clients kind of like consider what to do?
Well, I have my client, the kid wears the MAGA hat and then he wears the Biden shirt. So then you got it all covered, right? No, yeah. But no, that's a very, very real question. It's a very serious question. And the way family law works, you have the right to bring up your child the way you see fit. So if you want your child to be a super liberal at your house, and that's fine, and dad or mom wants to be a super conservative at the other house, then you could teach one way and teach the other way. There's nothing in the world wrong with that. The only time there would be a problem with it is if you were teaching something that was obviously dangerous to children or something like that. But the platforms of the Democrat and Republican Party aren't necessarily dangerous to children at all. And I realize we're in a heightened election season, but you understand what I'm saying. It's you have the right to raise your children the way you see fit, and if you want to teach them about conservative traditional values or liberal progressive stuff, that's totally up to you. It's going to make the kid feel a little weird, but a well-rounded kid that can make their own decision is maybe a better thing for the country, honestly.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I always tell clients who struggle with that, I want you to take every opportunity to teach your child, to teach them, your beliefs and why you believe what you believe, and to be expressive and excited about the power of their vote. And so, as a client, I would never encourage anyone to back away from that conversation. Now, obviously you don't want it to where the child is coming and crying to you because like every time he shows up at mom's house, you're sending him in with the MAGA hat. And, then she's ripping it off and setting fires in the backyard and screaming at him and grounding him, or even if that kind of stuff is happening. Well, there's a whole lot of different conversations you probably need to have with your counsel about how she's behaving.
Yeah, that's a different kind of family problem. I mean, it's the same thing as, you have two parents of different faiths. I've had, Muslim and Christian divorces where, they want the child to go to the mosque, and the mom wants the kid to go to the Catholic Church. So, I mean, that happens quite a bit. And it's something that you have to, that each family has to tackle. So, ultimately your kids are going to make the decision that they want to make when they're adults anyway. I think, in a split household, it's difficult, but I think you have the right to tell your kids what you believe and encourage them in a way that you see fit.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Let's talk a little bit about, obviously, so, looking at the ballot, looking at the votes, that are set to be cast. What about election night, brother? Like, you got any election night plans? I mean, how do you handle, there's like, election parties, you having one of those, or what's going on?
No, I mean, this year is going to be crazy because I don't know, I don't think they're going to announce a winner on the election night. I'd be kind of shocked if they did. Over the years, I've worked on political campaigns, so I've been at a political, party on the night of an election in another state once, in a swing state one time. That's a good experience. If you ever get an opportunity for your child or you to volunteer on a political campaign, that's a very good opportunity to meet people. And it's also a very good opportunity to learn about the process and, really how grassroots politics work and how, if you have a belief, you can make an impact, and how, if you feel really passionately about something, about how you can convince people to vote, vote the way that you want them to based on your belief system, or if you feel strongly or passionately about an issue. But no, as far as election night goes, I mean, we'll probably take it low key around here. I don't expect that we'll know anything. And, it's a crazy year. It's nothing that I've seen, but I will say this, I mean, get out and vote, because I truly believe the future of the country is at stake. I think there's two very, very differing opinions on where they want this country to go. And we've got, in a year where we've had a pandemic, we got a Supreme Court justice, we got everything that could possibly come up in a year on the ballot is probably, hinging on this vote in November.
Yeah, I definitely feels like we're at a crossroads as a nation. It feels like, this vote, will be one that I think, as many people probably recall, in the past. I know, talking to my mom about the election, she remembers kind of like the Kennedy, that whole time period where casting a vote had that kind of meaning. And it feels like this is that type of environment that we're in. That, whether it's going to be, you're going to vote for President Trump as an incumbent and you feel like it's, conservative values, or whether you're, I want a complete change and overhaul of where we're going in a different direction. I will tell you that it definitely feels like it's going to be highly contentious. I think that, we're early in the election process. So I do think that early voting is going to be really important. I'm with you. I would encourage everybody to get that done as quickly as possible. And then just, buckle up, because I feel like it could be days before we really have any kind of understanding about where the dust has settled. And even when it's settled, I don't know that it's going to be settled. So,
right. You could have a real constitutional crisis on your hands, depending on how some of these states go. I mean, you just don't know. The polls are all over the place. I think they're, I don't know. And the news media and the social media is all one direction. And it feels very odd this year. It's something different than the Dole Clinton 96 presidential election. That was very, 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 very tame compared to what's going on now. But I would also caution you. I mean, everybody has the right to, protest, to free assembly, to protest peacefully. If you feel like something is unjust is happening. And I would encourage you to do so. But be very, very careful of, there's a lot of radical elements out there that are causing a lot of problem. I mean, you don't want to be caught up in the wrong situation in terms of, you're at a protest that gets violent, for your own safety, number one, and for, the safety. You don't want to end up in a criminal situation because you're throwing a Molotov cocktail at a police car. Or two, there was a lawyer in New York that
saw that, yeah,
that got arrested, and they're probably going to get disbarred because they threw a Molotov cocktail and burned up a squad car. I mean, you don't want to get caught up in the emotional, it's perfectly fine to, to protest injustice or, things that you feel strongly about, but be careful which uniform you're wearing, and be careful, where where you're associating yourself with, especially with the pandemic going around, and especially with the sheer amount of civil unrest that's going on. These protests are turning violent almost nightly. And, I don't really know why. I mean, there's a world of difference between a peaceful protest and then, burning down a courthouse or burning down a police station or something.
Yeah, no, I mean, you without a doubt, Brian. And, the thing that makes our country special, at least in my opinion, one of the things that makes it special is that we've always been able to, have these just bitter disputes, but transition power peacefully. I mean, so whether it be that President Trump is staying in power, whether it be that somebody else is taking the office, that's never really been something that as a country we've, at least not since the 60s potentially, that I think that has really kind of been facing our nation like it is right now. And to your point, I mean, you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, even if it was with, purely genuine and innocent intentions to go and express, your political beliefs. You find yourself in a situation like that, you really want to extricate yourself as quickly as you can. And should you find yourself in a situation where you're being arrested, I'm going to tell you right now, you better find competent counsel. Remember your constitutional rights and find competent counsel, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it, especially if that type of activity has been going on, because, obviously, no matter what your perspective is, jail is real. Jail is real. Losing your freedoms is real. The fines, the penalties, incarceration, that's something that you can't even really comprehend until you're experiencing it. When you're experiencing it, you sure as hell want out of it. So, I just encourage our listeners to be smart, be ever vigilant. I always tell my kids situational awareness, right? Know where the hell you are and what's going on, and be, always have a plan if you need to get out. So just be safe out there.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's going to be a crazy ride, so buckle up and and see what happens. But if anybody can take anything away from this, it would be do some homework. Get yourself a little bit cognizant about the issues, especially the down ballot issues that nobody cares about but have the most impact on you. I mean, that's the thing that makes me so crazy sometimes, is nobody seems to care about these down ballot issues, these down ballot candidates. And those are the ones that have the most impact on your day-to-day life. Like I said, the local school board could be deciding what curriculum your children are learning. And if you have a very strong feeling, as I do, about certain things that are taught in classes, you may want to have your voice heard with respect to the person you're putting on the school board. And look, if you are curious about a candidate, especially a local one, or even from a local congressman to a state representative to a state senator, go to their office and talk to them. They're there. They'll talk to you. I promise you they'll talk to you. They'll want to talk to you.
They'll want to talk to you for sure.
Take your kids down there, find out who your local sheriff is, because look, if there's a lot of civil unrest that occurs, you're going to want to know who your local sheriff is. Because your local sheriff is hey, go down there, introduce yourself, introduce your family. Hey, you're our local sheriff. We want to say we support you. We support you guys. And, whatever the case may be, find out who your local officials are. Find out who your local senator and congressman are. And go down there. I promise you they're going to talk to you. And if you're a potential voter, they're going to talk to you. And, it's a good way to find out about the process. It's a good way to educate your family about the process. And it's a good way to find out about issues.
Yep, without a doubt. I want everybody to be empowered, emboldened to get out and vote. It's important. We talked a little bit about judges, and as a final note from me, I would just tell you that I can't tell you how many times people stand in front of a judge that they elected, have no idea who that person is, and get a terrible ruling. And if I were to ask them, a lot of times they're like, I didn't even know I voted for that person because I didn't. right? I didn't go to that election, or if I did, maybe I cast it and I didn't even know who that person was. I put them in on the bench without, even understanding their qualifications or their background. And that's a difficult thing in Texas, that we elect judges, because I will tell you that it's complicated. Look, being a judge is not an easy thing. Being in an office is not an easy thing. It's a tremendous amount of work. It requires a special skill, a special dedication, and you want to make sure that the people that you're putting in these positions are the right people, at least for you and from your perspective. It doesn't mean you're going to win because you cast a vote, but at least you can feel like you had a say, and that's really important. And I hope that everybody hears this, gets out early, cast their vote, and to Brian's point, you hold on through election day, because it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, and like I said, I couldn't stress enough. Find out about the candidates, find out about the issues. I mean, especially your state and local ones, because they have the most impact on your life, and they're going to talk to you. It'll never hurt you to be involved in the process, because I mean that's how the society runs. I mean, and to your point, the other thing I would say is talk to your state representative and your state senator, because they're the ones passing these laws. If you don't particularly I'll give you a great example. I've had a number of clients tell me over the years, I hate this visitation order. I don't understand why this visitation order is Thursday through Monday, or Thursday through Sunday, whenever it was Thursday and Thursday nights, and then Friday through Sunday. I don't understand why I only get weekends. I'm a weekend dad and this and that. And I'm like, look, the judges can only go by what the legislature gives them to go by. And the legislature is the one who came up with this, this standard possession order, whether you like it or you hate it. And I will tell you this, that standard possession order has been changed since I've been practicing law at least 6 times. And so that thing comes up before the state legislature for changes every legislative session. Every 2 years it comes up for consideration and possible changes. So if there's something like that comes in your worldview and you want changes made, talk to your state and local representatives, because they have a lot of sway on local family code, child support guidelines, visitation rights. Those are all things that your state representatives, your state senators and state representatives have a lot of impact on. And there's a lot of lobbying that goes on to these legislators, and they have a tremendous impact on your life.
Absolutely do, Brian. I mean, that's a great point. They absolutely do. Yeah, encourage everybody to get involved, get educated, and vote.
All right, man. So I like your Halloween decor back there.
I got the zombie back here. He's going to vote later on with me. So we'll see.
In some states, voting dead is just the same as voting alive, right?
That's right. As long as I can pin it to a name.
All right, man. Well, thanks for the time, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good, Brian. Take care.
Take care. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the Top Texas Lawyers podcast. If you would like a consultation with either Brian or Sam, please call 1-888-981-7509 or visit us on the web at astxlegal.com. Once again, that's astxlegal.com. Thank you very much.